Russia launching another major strike on Ukraine, this one involving more than 400 drones, 24 missiles. A subway station where people had taken shelter was one of the targets. All this hours before a virtual meeting of officials from the U.S., United Kingdom, Germany, and NATO, meeting with the new Ukrainian defense minister. These allies say that they've been working to get more weapons into Ukraine after the announcement from NATO with President Trump last week on sending in more Patriot missiles. Joining us now is Bill Taylor, the former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine. Welcome, as always, Ambassador Taylor. Status update. Where do you see this going?
So, good news over the past week, Connell. The weapons that you just talked about that President Trump has agreed to sell to the Europeans so that they can pass them on to the Ukrainians was the big part of the package, was the big part of this U-turn, of this change in policy. The other part, of course, is that you mentioned earlier, the 50-day deadline for new tariffs and possibly new secondary sanctions on nations that buy oil from Russia in an attempt to squeeze out revenue from the Russian economy so they can't pursue the war anymore. But the weapons are the big deal, and that was what's on the discussion today.
Do you think Trump ends up meeting with Putin in person? There's been this talk about, I don't know if it would matter if he did, and would change any of what we're talking about here with weapons and/or sanctions. The Pentagon, or I should say the Kremlin spokesperson, saying about the possibility of Putin and Trump meeting in Beijing on early September, or World War II event, that would be one day after that 50-day deadline that I talked about were to expire. Would it matter? Do you think it'll happen?
What's important for conversations is not just Trump and Putin. Of course, the important person to be involved, if it's going to talk about Ukraine, is President Zelenskyy. There's got to be three ways that they're going to talk about that war. That said, President Trump seems to have come to a different conclusion about Putin, about whether or not Putin is a serious person to talk to about these negotiations, about a ceasefire, about a settlement. And President Trump seems to have concluded that Putin is not. He famously says every time he talks to him, he hangs up and there's a new volley of missiles and strikes against the Ukrainians. First Lady pointed out to him as well. Yeah. So I think President Trump has got some real skepticism about the value of talking to Putin.
That whole thing seemed weird to you at all, Ambassador? The fact that Trump started speaking that way, kind of all of a sudden, it wasn't like a revelation that any of us would be surprised. Oh, Putin's BSing us. I mean, we all kind of knew that that's the way Putin operates, but Trump kind of came to it very quickly. Did that stand out to you?
Well, you're right. I mean, there was this sudden change last week, which, frankly, was welcome, was very welcome. There was, in my view, very important change. But we had seen indications earlier. You reported well on the conversations between President Trump and President Zelenskyy have gotten better and better, warmer and warmer, more cooperative, more able to come to agreements on these things. But President Trump and President Zelenskyy have agreed on a ceasefire. Yeah. And when President Trump took that proposal to President Putin, Putin said no. So I think we've seen this over time. But you're right. I think I just got to the point where the almost mocking of President Trump by President Putin sunk in, and President Trump seems to understand that now.
Yeah, it got under his skin. You could tell. I mean, he was, he was worked up about it. So now the question is it just talk? Is it just angry, or is it sanctions? Is it tariffs? Is it action? I mean, what do you think?
I think the important thing is not really, well, sanctions and tariffs, that's going to be fine if they come, as you say. It's a real question. But more important than that are the weapons. Yeah. And that was the big part of the discussion last week, of the decision last week, is to allow those weapons to go. Before that, there had not been an indication that the Americans were going to provide weapons to the Ukrainians like they have been doing. There was a worry that, certainly the Ukrainians I talked to, that there might not be more weapons coming from the United States, even though they're going to be coming through the Europeans. The Europeans are going to buy them and send them to the Ukrainians. That was a big decision and a very welcome one as far as the Ukraine is concerned.
Always great. Ambassador Bill Taylor on these issues. Thanks as always, Ambassador. Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.